That's what I said I'd signal back to, remember? Here's another big point that I'd love for you to take home here. If you're really anxious, it's probably because you really care. If you care about something, it's got a greater power to hurt you. The more you, almost every athlete that I've ever worked with could tell me the time when their anxiety started, and it's almost always when they either leveled up, they went to middle school to high school, or high school to college, or college to pro, or they went from bench to starter, or they went from JV to varsity. But at some point they said, hey, this is going to matter, I'm going to invest more. And boom, they gave their sport, their performance, the power to hurt them, which you have to do. You get married, you give that person the power to hurt you. It's not why you get into it, but it happens. The more you care about your grades, then the more a failure in that area is going to hurt you. And that's why you can't trust your head that's just trying to warn you that now this is a dangerous place to be. Because it's also telling you it's a wonderful place to be. It's a place that you care the most about. But we have to learn how to interact with these thoughts and these feelings differently. So as I started to say, I'm assuming with all the perfectionists here that you're smarter than a turtle. So I would like you, we're going to do this for about 90 seconds. I would like you to pat your head over and over again. Oh, hold on, great audience. But let me explain it first. And I'm going to give you a phrase that I would like you to say out loud over and over again. For about 45 seconds, I want you to say it out loud. And then for the next 45 seconds, I'm going to say, okay, now I just want you to think it, but keep patting your head. And with this exercise, there's no way that you can get it wrong. I've done this, I don't know how many, literally thousands of people have done it. Everybody has the same experience, so try not to analyze it, and we'll debrief it afterwards. But just really kind of notice what it's like to say this phrase that I'm going to give you and pat your head at the same time. And the phrase is, I can't pat my head. Go. Can't pat my head. I can't pat my head. Yeah, get a good picture of this. So really concentrate. I can't pat my head. Try to believe it. You can't pat your head. You can't pat your head. Now I'm your coach. I'm your parent. I'm your teacher. You can't pat your head. You can't pat your head. You stink at patting your head. Your form in patting your head is off the charts. All right, now keep patting and now think it to yourself. And that voice that bothers the heck out of you, that voice that nags you, that worries you, really try to believe what you're thinking. Okay, what did that feel like? What did it feel like? Remember? I usually get weird. Can we agree? Was that a weird experience for people? All right, so what's the point of this? What's the lesson here? We like it when our thoughts, feelings, and actions go together. When I lose a game, it makes sense that I'm upset. And maybe I cry about it, right? If I think that I'm going to do poorly, I feel anxious and I tend to play bad. If I feel hungry, I think I want to get some food and I walk to the refrigerator. So we like the coherence. Even when my parents passed away, I didn't like the experience of it, but it was coherent with my thoughts, feelings, and actions that I felt the loss. I thought I would miss them, and I would cry at the funeral, right? I don't like that, but at least it makes sense when it goes together. This is why athletes come to me. I want to think positively and feel confident so that I can play well. But you just had this experience. I can't pat my head where your thoughts went in one direction. While you were patting your head, your actions were in the exact opposite direction. And then you had a third confusing feeling of like, this is really weird. There's magic in here. That your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions are actually independent. And I can bring this back to my first slide. Sports don't care about what you think or feel. Your grades don't care about what you think or feel. Your job, your health. This is good news for us. We already know that our thoughts have an agenda. What's our mind's job? To protect ourselves, to warn us of danger. Our mind's job is to actually worry. So we can't trust it. We can't let our thoughts be in charge of the way we live our life. This is good because they don't have to go together. We can just let our mind do its job and decide if we want to interact with it or not. We can't base our life on feelings, right? Because we know those are crazy. Those will go all over the place. They come and they go. So that's a whole nother lecture. I'll come back for that one. But what we want to be able to base ourselves on is realize that, hey, I can do stuff that I can commit my heart to that's important to me no matter what I think and feel. And you're already good at this. You're already good at this. Let me ask you some questions or give some examples. You can think, I can't do this, whatever this is, while you're feeling discouraged, and then you can actually choose to focus on what it is that you're doing. You can think we're going to lose, feel hopeless, and then execute the play. Gosh, this test is going to be hard. I'm really nervous about it. And then you can sit down and study with those thoughts and feelings. This class stinks. I am so bored. And then you can bring yourself into the moment and pay attention. I'm not saying this is easy to do. This is why positive thinking and confidence are great, because if you have them, don't get rid of them, don't ignore them, use them. It makes it easier. But ultimately, it's down to still performing, still choosing the behavior. Well, I don't want to disappoint others. Maybe I feel tired. You can still hustle with those thoughts and feelings. And here's that one that I talked about. Oh gosh, but it's hard. Think about something that you maybe haven't done so well up to this point because it's hard. And you're like, gosh, it's just so hard. And watch what happens when you change it to and it's hard. I'm going to pick on you because you smiled and nodded. Can I ask, what changed when you switched your butt to and? Freeing and empowering. Because what happened, I'm guessing, is that when we say, but it's hard, hard is what we're focusing in on, making it impossible, and everything before then just gets erased. It's almost like it can't coexist, as if it has to be easy in order for me to do it. Or at least suggesting that I'm unwilling to do it unless it's easy. But what probably opened up for you, and I hope the others, is that when I say, and it's hard, then I invite that pain into the experience. Which is leading me up to the next point. But before I get there, another quick refocusing strategy. When you get distracted by your insides, your thoughts and feelings, focus on your actions on the outside. It's a quick reset for sports or something else. There's nothing good that can often happen when we're trapped in our own thoughts and feelings, particularly when we're trying to play a game. Get back on the outside. That's a quick refocus. And let me illustrate to you how you're already good at this. Have you ever felt sick or tired and wanted to stay home but go to school and practice anyway? Yes. Have you ever felt frightened but act confidently? Yes. Do you ever think I can't do it and then do it anyway, besides what we just did today? No? Yes, okay, good. Do you ever think about stealing something but not do it? Yes. Do you ever feel sad but act happy, put on a happy face? Do you ever feel angry but actually act calmly and not act out in anger? Do you ever think about cheating but not cheat? Do you ever want to quit school or skip class but go anyway? Do you ever want to yell at somebody but actually keep quiet instead? Do you ever dislike a teammate but cooperate with him or her? Do you ever feel like running away from a stressful or awkward situation but stay and deal with it? Let me ask you another question. If you did everything that ever crossed your mind, if you acted on every urge that you have ever had, where would you be right now? I've gotten those answers before. In fact, every time what does that say? That you are really good about not acting on thoughts and feelings. That you have literally had thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of thoughts and feelings that you don't act on. It's interesting that when we think that I'm going to fail the test though, or I don't want to go to do this at bat, or when it's something that we really care about, that all of a sudden those thoughts and feelings feel different. They've got some kind of greater power. And I'm telling you that they're exactly the same as all that other stuff that we just talked about. It feels different because you care more. But it doesn't mean that it's more true, and it doesn't mean that it's more dangerous or more likely to happen. Excuse my enthusiasm for this, but I love this point, and I hope you're with me on this, that this should greatly empower you to stop believing yourself. You're not trustworthy. You're not trustworthy. You lie to yourself all the time. And you should be fearful of these things because there's a little bit of truth in it, but you're not trustworthy. You can't listen to this because A, we can't make it stop, nor should we, but you got to learn how to interact with it. So when these thoughts and feelings actually work for you, when they move you in a direction you want to go, by all means stay attached to them. But when they do not, when you check in and you see that you're actually not participating, isolating, not studying, whatever it is that's moving you away from where you want, you've got to look and say, hey, maybe I'm just having an experience. Maybe I just have to be willing to feel the pain, feel the awkwardness in service of doing something. Make room for it, like we did with that and word. Invite it in. So now we're going to revisit this holding the breath thing. What I invite you to do in a little bit is we're going to give you, it's already a 90-second time cap. But I'm going to ask you to hold your breath again, but I want you to do it differently. I don't want you to distract. I don't want you to do your best in the sense of fight through it and grit. I don't want you to ignore your pain. I want you to actually lean into it. I want you to decide how much pain you're going to be willing to experience to get a better number, to hold your breath longer. You haven't practiced it. You're not any more talented than you were before. But I'm going to work on your willingness here. Can you be willing to feel more pain? Can you actually be curious about how the burning in your chest feels? Notice how it changes. Make the decision over and over again to feel pain, to feel pain, to feel pain, because it's going to be worth it for that goal of the number. And I'll be curious about what your experience is like. So I'm going to invite you again at the count of 3 to hold your breath. 1, 2, 3. Be curious, notice, and let the discomfort be there. Notice how big it is, where it is in your chest, and just notice it as an experience without evaluating it as good or bad. Remind yourself of why, of what you want, of why you choose this experience. Notice that you have to choose to lean into the feeling over and over again. Moment to moment, you keep choosing. And that's the timer. So by a show of hands, how many people improved their time? Look around the room. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? That actually turning into our pain, not running away from it, letting it be there instead of trying to control it. How many people, besides improving your performance, how many people actually suffered less? If you know what I mean there. Like, yes, the pain was there, but it didn't hurt as much, or, again, because you had some meaning. Did anybody suffer less? Okay, a couple. This is the power of the willingness. And so one more practical point to end. There has to be a point. There has to be a why, right? And so another quick focusing strategy when you've got all this stuff going on is that if you want to win, you have to focus on what's important now. That's what WIN stands for. What's important now? What's right in front of you? What's the pitch that you need to hit, or the shot you need to take, or the hustle play you need to do? Is it studying? Is it connecting with the teacher and listening? But I love this refocusing strategy. I ask it in my own life all the time. Like if I start to get confused, if I start to get trapped on the inside, I go, wait, what's important now? And like if I'm nervous right now, it'd be like, you're what's important. Teaching you this skill is what's important. And that's it. It just brings me right to here, right now. What do I need to do? It's a great question to keep in your back pocket and ask yourself all during the day to just keep bringing yourself back. Doesn't matter what you think and feel. What do I need to do in the right here and now? So I think that brings me to my summary slide, which are the main points. Your sport, your grades, your health don't care about what you think or feel. Apparently neither does my clicker. There we go. Your actions are independent of what you think and feel, and that's good news. That's empowering. Your worry, our negative thoughts and feelings, they're normal. Congratulations, they're necessary. So choose your reactions to them very, very carefully. Be willing to feel pain in service of your goals, and remember to focus on what's important now so you can have continued success. Here's some contact information for me. If you'd like to continue the conversations, I've got a lot of videos, like 160 videos, mental toughness in 60 seconds on my YouTube channel. I post a lot onto the social media. I'd love to be a resource to you. I'm local in Grand Rapids here. I think we do questions now. Is that right? I think we can. Stay as long as you like. I'd be happy to be here. I guess I'm in charge of this. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Any questions, comments? Wow, I explained everything perfectly.
What about your degree? Tell me about how you started this, how you got into this type of career path.
Yeah, so the question is, what's my degree and how did I get started into this? So I was a nerd. I was reading Freud in like 6th grade, analysis of dreams, very interested in all the psychology right from the beginning. Knew I wanted to be a psychologist early on, went to college, majored in psychology. The last class I took was sports psychology. And I was like, wow, this would have been helpful I was a runner in track. And I was just really, I couldn't believe that there was actually a way to actually interact with thoughts and feelings in a way to enhance performance. So I wanted to stay with clinical work, so I did get my degree in clinical psychology, so the traditional things like depression and anxiety, but I actually studied what athletes will most often go through. So I became a specialist in pain and injury rehabilitation, and my practice is built largely around a lot of performance anxiety and perfectionism. And that just seems to be what most athletes are coming in with. I do some disordered eating and stress and management. And it was really because I wanted to really work with athletes. And I also found that for my non-athletes, the sports psychology, the psychology of performance, actually applies to any area of living. So I love to help athletes be better, but I also like to take the same principles of performance excellence and apply them to everyday people like myself. I'm not going to the Olympics. That window is closed. And realize that we're all performers in everything that we want to do. And there's a science to it. There's a way to do it best. And so that's where I come from. I've been doing it for over 20 years. And I hope you can feel I'm just as excited about it now. Because this is stuff that I wish, I'm so thankful again. Thank you for AAA for bringing me in. Like, I wish I had this when I was in high school. My relationships, my life would be different. I wish I knew I didn't have to be perfect. I wish I knew the value of mistakes earlier on. I know my emotional life would have been different. I wish we could get this into the hands of our youth earlier, because I think these are life principles that people just didn't tell me. So that's why I'm on stage, because I want to tell as many people as possible. That's why I share this on social media and give it away. There's a lot of life changing that can be happening in these messages, I believe. So thanks for the question. Any others? Oh, thanks.
I apologize. I don't know if it's a question, but what are your thoughts in any way as far as tactics, techniques, teaching relative to medication? Perhaps an example
Well, I could probably answer it as general as you asked it. And what the research shows is that if you're talking about problems, emotional problems, mental illness, that a combination of therapy and medications often does best. Now, getting into the specifics of when do you use meds or when don't you, that's very hard to address because there's everything from anxiety to depression to bipolar to, is it a chemical imbalance? I've known people who haven't responded well to therapy because they've just had a brain imbalance and they needed a certain chemical. And I have others that get on meds way too quickly and what they need is some skill building. So I would say that both can have a role. I can certainly say that particularly for anxiety, sometimes it can be helpful to start off on meds, but do not think that you have to rely on them. Because chemicals with medications, they're just chemicals. They also have side effects and they do other things to your brain. It's not like there's this one specific pill that helps your specific depression or your specific anxiety. It's a chemical that goes in there and it does things to your whole system. So I'm also not a psychiatrist or a medical doctor, so I don't prescribe, so I'm a little obviously biased more toward the therapy aspects. But I don't want to discount one or the other. I know certainly with depression, I know another big generalization is that if there's depression and you've got really a lot of those physical symptoms where I just don't have the energy, that sometimes chemicals can jumpstart that. So medications can be helpful when you've got those physical aspects of it. But if you've got a lot of the thinking and the relating to your world in a depressive or anxious way, there's a lot of this stuff that can help. And the research has shown that in and of itself can do tremendous things as well. So I hope that give you, okay, great, awesome.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
from an athlete standpoint, we all make mistakes in the midst of the event. And our tendency sometimes is to focus on the thoughts and feelings. But your presentation said, not focus on those, focus on the actions.
Yes.
Can you give us an example about how would you do that?
Okay, so the question is how exactly do you focus on your the actions when you're feeling overwhelmed by your thoughts and feelings? So I guess what I would add is I could give you a 3-step process that I really like to use. It's called S-E-E. And the first step is separate. Like if you're not aware of what's going on, you can't do anything about it. So for anybody here about sort of mindfulness, are people familiar with that term? So for those of you that know that, this is the ability to kind of step back and kind of watch yourself. So you step outside. So if I make a mistake and I'm like furious and I could be like, whoa, I can just take a moment and realize I'm really ticked off right now. I can recognize that when something happens in my life, if I'm really scared, that I'm in an anxious moment and maybe I can't be trustworthy, right? So step 1 is being able to jump back and separate from the emotion that I'm going through. The second part of embrace is actually where I have to lean back into it and recognize why that negative emotion is there. If you're upset after a mistake, instead of feeling like I shouldn't be upset and try to force yourself to deal with it, that's never going to work. How many people have tried that? How many people have had it work? Right? It doesn't. So the opposite is that, again, let me justify why I'm so angry. I'm mad because I really care about this and I didn't want this to happen. And then I hope we would have that experience that you had, which is like you give yourself permission to feel bad. Then all of a sudden it's okay feeling bad and you don't have to justify it anymore, which frees you up to the second E, evaluate. So what do I need to do? Now, you may not be able to if this is I remember the first time I tried to do this, there's something going on in my personal life. It took me a half hour to get through that process. Because if it's a really overwhelming thing, sometimes there aren't quick fixes. So if it's a chronic issue that you're really struggling with, you might have to bounce back and forth, but those are the 3 steps. I go back to what's important now, that if you have to make an instant decision, you have to understand that when you're playing the game, that's going on moment to moment. Again, look at the sport. If you're a half second ahead or behind the play, the ball, the puck, something bad happens. Like you really have to be into the now of it. And so the quick answer is if it's happening in a game, you just simply have to make the decision. There is no shortcut rather than the commitment of realizing that your mind, your anxiety, your emotions at that point serve you no good right then and there. You have to deal with them later. And there is no quick fix other than understanding, but it's safe to let them go. That's what I hope much of today did for you, was realizing that all these negative things and stuff that we're biologically drawn to pay attention to and saying, this is what's important now, my feelings are important now, that you kind of realize, no, that it actually isn't. I'm in the context of a game, and I can safely let that go and deal with that later, whether it be a bad call or a mistake that I make. Does that answer it well? Good question. Anything else?
I got one.
Yes.
In
I think screen time is a problem for everything. I don't know any research that has tied perfectionism specifically with screen time. What I can say that I've seen familiar is, interesting story. So I went to high school with Puff Daddy, and I know how successful he became, right? And so there was a time when he first became successful that I wouldn't buy his record, and I was like jealous. I'm like, man, like I could have been a rap star. Like, how come Sean got to do that? Now, I'm very happy with my career choice, but there was an issue for a while. And I think before screen time, before the internet, before things, I never would have known what Sean did in his life. You know, back in the 50s, you know, you just go on, you live your life, and you don't have the comparison. So I do think that there is something about the social media and knowing what everybody's doing and how everybody's Instagram feeds looks better than mine. Everybody's eating better food than I'm eating, going to more interesting places than I'm going, and having more happy times than I'm having. Like, their Thanksgiving is this wonderful thing, and mine was just filled with, hey, will you kids sit down and, you know, the comparison, I think, can be dangerous. Everybody looks better on their Instagram and Facebook feeds. And I think that can create anxiety. That can create wanting. There's a dangerous comparison. So I think that's been pretty much established and talked a lot about. So I hope that answers it. I'm a fan of Sean now, by the way, just for the record. Wonderfully talented. Yes, sir?
Is there a different approach for younger kids? This seems to be more geared towards high schoolers.
You know, that is a great question. The question was, is this geared more towards older kids or younger? So, when I get kids about 10, like, that's about as young as I'll be able to work with, because these are very abstract concepts, which is what you're getting to. And I've honestly made the mistake of, like, when I really got into this, trying to teach this to 10, 11, 12-year-olds. And it didn't work so well, because they didn't know what the heck I was talking about. But what I did find is that these principles, if I would kind of put it into the language for younger kids, that they actually still apply. Like, as I said, with my son being, 8 or 6, for example, the way that we interact and respond to mistakes, they're going to learn from us. Modeling, like, if we get this and bring it home, the way we handle our stress, our kids are watching us. I have all these embarrassing stories. So same kid, he's like 1, right, maybe 2, because I can remember he grew up. He's got a saggy diaper, and I have intermittent low back pain. I remember my son going up the stairs like this. And I'm like looking like, where did he get that from, Like, these kids see us. They're watching us all the time. So how we interact with coaches, how we handle mistakes, how we handle our mistakes, how we handle bad calls. Kids are watching all the time. It doesn't matter what we tell them. It matters what we show them. So for young kids, I think one of the best things that we could do from birth through 12 is to learn this stuff ourselves and live it and model it, and without all the technical terms. But creating safety in their feelings. Not like, if they're sad and upset, us demonstrating and modeling for them that it's okay to be sad and upset, and they can actually continue to do what it is that they're doing as they do it. Not having to rescue our kids that every time they're upset and they tell them to do the dishes and they're mad and upset about it, not to have to fix that because it's not okay for them to be upset about it. Yeah, you can be upset about it. You don't have to like doing the dishes, but in our family, we participate. And your comfort with that teaches them acceptance. So I hope that answers the question. If I do get a younger athlete in, I try to stick a little bit more with the skill building. So what's important now, taking a deep breath to calm down, to control things when they can. I've learned that that's probably the best thing at the earlier stages. That sometimes they just don't know what they should be paying attention to. What's important now? Their answer is often, I don't know. I'm like, okay, we'll focus on the ball. Oh, okay, I can do that. Well, that was easy. I made that too complicated. Great question. And there was another one. Yes, ma'am. So for everybody, the question that I'm getting is, what do you do in a situation of youth sport where, and I think it's important because there's a difference at every level between youth sport and then high school and then college and pro, obviously. But at your youth sport level, when the kid makes a mistake, it's a teaching moment that as a parent you would like him to learn, but the coach just pulls the kid off and he made a mistake and he's off the field and now somebody else is in and the kid doesn't get to learn from it and he's upset about it when you get home. What do you do then? We would of course love, but it's impossible for the coaches to be able to take care of 10, 20, 30 kids and take all of these possible teaching moments. So in this response, I want to give a nod to the coaches and a gratitude for what they do and how difficult that job is. We can assist that, one, by kind of explaining the reality of it and being okay with the mistake. Like the kid's going to be upset that he made a mistake and he got pulled. Well, let's say he's a little bit older and he had to get pulled because maybe he wasn't managing it well. He was making it, let's say he made a mistake 2 or 3 times. It's a coach's responsibility to kind of help the team win. Winning still is important. We do keep score, right? It's not the most important thing, but it is important. And again, particularly the higher that we get. So how do we teach that child to understand that there are consequences over mistakes? And that doesn't mean that we're a bad person. You brought up a great point that every time we make a mistake and we get pulled, well, no, that was a bad thing and now I was punished. Well, that's one way to think about it. Or the other one is to really acknowledge that I wasn't good enough. Somebody over here says, I'm not good enough. Yeah, we're not. I'm not good enough to play Major League Baseball or to be a starter or to do this. I wasn't good enough to stay in the game. That doesn't have to be an evaluation of me as a person. Maybe we could kind of say, my play wasn't good enough. My skills aren't good enough yet. So depending on the child, you open up a conversation and you find out, well, what does it mean? If they're taking it personally, if they're saying that it's something that I am, then we got to switch and say, no, this has nothing to do with your character. But this is an opportunity to grow. Yeah, you got pulled off, so what do you need to do to get better? I don't know. Well, then maybe you can go back and ask your coach at practice tomorrow. And then the coach is likely at a practice situation, not during a game, when there's a bunch of things to manage, probably has more of an opportunity. And so I would invite the child, not the parent. Let me say that again. The child, not the parent, to go to the coach and say, hey, you pulled me off. How can I get better? What did you see there? And sometimes every coach that I've ever worked with has really responded well to that. They love, and coaches who are in the room, please tell me, they love when kids are asking how to get better. They can't always catch it. But helping your child or that child own the mistake, not take it personally, and then respond with what we call a growth mindset. What can I learn from that? And seek it out from the coach is maybe the best repair that could be done. Ideally, coaches will be able to coach on the side or have an assistant coach take care of it, but I know a lot of opportunities are missed. It's a challenge. Does that answer the question? Good. And I thought there was another. Yes, hi.
What would you say makes a successful team?
What makes a successful team?
Yeah, I think like a lot of the things you've covered are focused on the individual.
Yeah.
What about when you're like in a scenario where you kind of don't have any other option but to rely on others?
Yep.
And that's not something that you can control at all.
So specific to that, if you didn't hear her, she says, particularly in a team where it's interdependent, it's not just all about you, and you've got to interact with others, what makes a good team? I mean, this could be another hour, but I'm going to give you 2 particular things that are, I think, maybe most important. One is knowing your role and accepting your role, staying in your lane. If you don't trust your teammate and you kind of cross that boundary and try to do his or her job, then you can't be doing yours, and that's where the mistakes are going to come up. So I have seen teams fall apart when everybody's worried about what everybody else is doing. Stay in your lane and trust that your teammates will stay in their lane. And the second part of that is that you're going to often have a role that you don't like. Not everybody can be the scorer or the starter, but every role is necessary. Now, I've also heard coaches say, and every role is equally important. That's not true. I hate that. Don't try to tell a team that, hey, everybody's equally important. No, they're not. They're not, right? There are certain positions that are more important. There are certain roles that are more important. The starters are more important than people coming off the bench. It's just the way it is, and we don't have to apologize for it. And don't lie, coaches, to your kids and make them think that it's all equal. It isn't. A great team will take that person who's coming off the bench and he or she will accept that role and play that role to the greatest. If all you're doing is running the scout team and you're just a great practice player and you don't get many minutes, it takes a tremendous heart and tremendous character to accept that role that season and be the best practice player that you can be, striving and fighting to earn the spot the following year. That doesn't feel good, but if you're asking what makes the best team, it's knowing your role, accepting your role, and playing your role to the very best that you can. It's a brave question. Yes? Thank you.
Great talk, really insightful even for some of the older athletes out here. You mentioned that anxiety is sometimes a good thing, but
Yeah.
do you ever have too much anxiety? And if you can, how do you identify that and quell that, like before a game or a race?
Great, yeah, absolutely. So again, the question for everybody was anxiety can be a good thing. We try to create safety in the experience of this, but can never be too much. Absolutely. Very often it's too much. And then what do you do about it? So it'll be a little bit of summary or maybe packaging differently what I've said. The first is understanding that if you have anxiety and it's distracting you, maybe one of the first things you can kind of do is by recognizing how normal it is. Let me ask it this way. Anybody here like roller coasters? All right. What do you feel like when you're on a roller coaster? Aren't you like terrified? Right? You got the heart rate, the blood pressure's up, you're sweating, you're shaking, but you're loving it. Anxiety is exactly the same thing, but just with a different cognitive or thinking interpretation about what it means. So, since we've already established that you're playing a sport that you love and you're in a big pressure situation and you're scared and you're nervous, and I had to do this before coming on here. I couldn't wait to get here. I present all the time and I love it. But I was like, oh man, it's going to be a forces. There's 3 groups. There's going to be lots of people, right? And I said, yeah, I'm excited. And then my head said, no, you're nervous. But then I said, no, yeah, I'm nervous, but I'm excited, like, because I care about this. This means that I want to be here. And I have to create the safety in it. But you can make a mistake. And what if this happens? Yeah, I know, right? So it's this constant dialogue. Don't think that one response is going to make it go away and make it comfortable. This is a process of over and over again looking at it. And if you can create safety, either because you realize that it's just nervousness, or you can reinterpret it as this is excitement, this is preparation. There have been some people, my first class I took in sports psychology, my advisor had said there's this unfortunate psychologist who wasn't a sports psychologist, went to a basketball team and did all this imagery and relaxed the basketball team because, everybody's nervous before games. And then they went out and they got their butts kicked because they were so relaxed. They had no energy. Right? We need that anxiety. So if we take sort of the threat of the anxiety out, that's the best thing that you could do. And then again, if it is threatening or if it is too much, those strategies that I said earlier are the ones that they're not magical. You have to commit your heart to them. You have to make the decision that I am really distracted on the inside. When I tell you then to focus on the outside, that isn't like, oh, thanks, I never thought of that. Like, you already knew that. But what I'm saying is that you have to have a heart that says, I know the right place to be is not where I'm at. I'm going to make the decision to go there and be willing to feel the pain and the effort to do it. This is hard stuff. Mental toughness. They don't call it mental easiness. It's hard. And if you can accept that it's difficult and make those choices as I went out. And that gets done by practicing. If you wait to do this on your next cross-country meet or the next football game or the next basketball game or volleyball game, if you just decide to, what did O'Connor say 2 weeks ago? I should do that. You need to practice this every day. If you just practice your sport on game day, it'd be terrible, right? So your mental skills and these emotional skills are ones that, hey, I don't know about your life, but I get to practice this stuff all the time. In sport, out of sport, at my job, with my family. Again, am I the only one suffering all the time? Okay, by the laughter, I hope not. And so these are all opportunities and skills to practice. Take just 1 or 2 of the things that you learned today and see if you can apply it to something in your life every day and watch that skill improve. Great question. I think there was another one. Okay, we'll go left to right. My left to right. So, I can't answer that question because of confidentiality. So the question was, what athlete had the best mental toughness and why that I've met with? So the way that I work is with confidentiality. So anybody that I've worked with, I can't talk about that. So I don't have a good general answer since that was such a specific question about identities. I'm sorry. So what does a great mental toughness look like? Maybe would be a good question to answer. So I define mental toughness in this way, as being better and more consistent than your opponents in remaining determined, focused, confident, and in control under pressure. And that's interesting based on all the stuff that I said I don't believe on it. But what you'll find actually is that when you actually distance from everything else and focus on what you need to do in the right here and the right now, all that other stuff tends to show up. So I would say maybe another way to answer it is, what's the most important mental skill? And I would absolutely say it's focus. I've seen people who lack motivation but are committed and get it done. I've seen people who are doubtful and insecure but focus and get it done. But I've never seen anybody lack focus and get anything done. And then there was a question on this side. Yes?
That might kind of answer it a little bit, but in the heat of the moment when the athlete's giving it their all and their best and they make a mistake and then the crowd sighs and then the coach screams, "What are you doing? Are you kidding me?" And then they're already hard on themselves. When they get back to regroup, I mean, these are a lot of things to think of, but at the maybe teenage age, is there a quicker way just to be focused?
Unfortunately, I don't think there is. I mean, the hard part. So the question is, teenage athlete, heat of the moment, makes a mistake. Coach, heat of the moment, gets angry, yells. Everybody's upset. Is there a quicker way to get to calm? Is that basically what you're asking?
Yeah, just so that you don't like blow the whole game or not be able to not focus.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question.
That's okay.
But I think what I'm hearing from you is actually what I do see in my office a lot. Is like, gee, Dr. Ed, this sounds like a lot of work. Is there a quick way to kind of just get past this? And I guess what I'm trying to say is no, there isn't. There is no shortcut to this. Emotional regulation is hard. I am a professional, and I lose my cool. Not a lot, but I lose it. I've yelled at my kids. Like, cut the camera here. Like, I've yelled at my kids. I've made mistakes. I've stayed up too late. I've eaten donuts. Like, I've done stuff that I don't want to do. Over and over again. Because this is hard. It's a constant process. And going back to the question earlier about the best ones, like the pros, they've just cultivated a life of intentional decision making and a willingness to feel all the pain and a willingness to sacrifice everything. When I work with high school athletes, what I often get is they don't understand hard work yet. Funny story, when I was coaching Rocket football, like the coaches that I was working with were just telling these kids to dig deep. I'm like, they're 8 years old. They have no, like, they're going to pull out a shovel. They're like, what are you talking about, dig deep? I had one person who I was treating for pain, and parents had brought in because the pain was so severe for this kid, reporting like an 8 out of 10 pain. And so of course the parents are very upset about it, but I'm working and the kid didn't seem so distressed. And I was like, well, what's a 10 out of 10 pain? And the kid was, oh my gosh, it's when I dropped that can of beans on my foot. Like, that was a 10. And all of a sudden the treatment changed, and it was like, look, the kid's fine. They just didn't have perspective of what pain is. And this is a real true story. So as you teenagers, and I hate to tell you, but more pain is coming. You don't even know how bad life can get. And that's why when parents are like, we went to school uphill in the snow both ways, it's true. So your question there is, we're taking these athletes and we're exposing them to greater stressors and at greater levels of competition. Freshman year, JV is harder and requires more, and then varsity is harder and requires more, and then college. And so it's a way of nurturing them and taking them step by step and helping them develop the capacity to take more intense emotions and greater adversity. And it does take a long time. There are no quick fixes. It's a daily commitment as parents to do it and coaches. What a long-winded answer that was. I wish there was a shortcut, because I would write about it and make a lot of money and cure the world in a heartbeat, and it just doesn't exist. And I think our desire to want that quick fix is actually the thing that ends up hurting us the most. That we don't respect our emotions and the sadness and the sacrifice that it takes to be great. I could go on another tangent about participation medals, and now I hate them. There's nothing wrong with losing. Like, we have to respect greatness for what it is. We can't say everybody's great, because then greatness would lose meaning. The fact is, half of us in this room are below average. Isn't that terrifying? But nobody's going to say who that is. We don't think it's me. Half of them. We all think we're above average, and I think that's unhealthy. I think it's really unhealthy for us not to recognize what greatness truly is. I could just keep doing this. Any other questions to get me switching topics? Yes, sir.
I work in healthcare.
Or ma'am, sorry.
I work in healthcare. Sometimes I need to decompress. What do you do for self-care after you hear all these people's problems?
Oh, so what do I do? How do we decompress? What do I do for self-care? It's actually a great question because in this year in particular, I've taken specific steps to make better choices because I would like to produce. So number one is sleep. I have made sleep a real priority in like understanding what it does, how much we need as a society, and as high schoolers, we're sleep deprived. And the number one thing you can do is to get 8 to 9 hours. There is nothing better for your health, for your sport performance, for your emotional health, than getting a full sleep. You can't find it anywhere else. There's no pill that's going to do it. So and it can be a challenge, but sleep would be number one. And then a regular exercise. I love CrossFit, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that because you know the number one rule of CrossFit is to always talk about CrossFit. So I've been able to work that in. But I love to work out, and I find that if I don't work out at least 3, preferably 4 days a week, I am not a good dad, psychologist, or person. So I have to make that a priority, and that becomes difficult because then I have to balance other aspects. But I would say sleep and exercise are absolute requirements for me. You guys are incredibly attentive. I'm happy to keep answering more. We're having gradual attrition, but if you're willing to stay, yes, you're next, and then I'll get to you.
Mine is a comment more than a question.
Okay.
As a grandparent, I just see family time and times when you come together and talk diminishing and as dangerous as computer time.
Yeah.
Dinners now, everybody's doing their sport, and it's very rare that we sit down and now we can discuss how we can handle different things. Then I thought, okay, now we're going to Sunday, because Sunday was always the time. But now these children at age 8 are on travel teams. And so Sunday is no longer a sacred time where, okay, we have Sunday where we can, lie down, go to the beach, go to do an activity where we can sit down and talk together. And that's just, I'm concerned about technology, yes, but I'm almost more concerned about the family and the times that you build that support structure so that kids are able to better deal with some of these problems that are involved in sports.
Yeah, thank you. So to summarize for those that didn't hear, she was talking a lot about sort of the value of family and family time and how our society has really moved to not only technology pulling things away, but travel sports. I was talking with others earlier about even how school and homework and AP classes at younger ages. And our kids, I mean, it is a fact, it has been proven that you are the most stressed out of any generation ever. So congratulations on winning that. But that speaks to exactly what you're saying, is that we are having more performance pressures and less time. And that actually goes back to the sleep aspect that I was talking about earlier that we've also found. Places like Greece where they used to have siestas, and then they've found the pressure to keep producing and keep doing more, even though the research finds that now their cardiac rates, their cardiac disease rates have skyrocketed since they've gotten rid of siesta. But the short-term gain is coming at the long-term health. And I'm with you on just like, we just keep ignoring the science of what's going on. It's a societal problem. I share your concern. So we speak and we educate. And then it becomes up to the families that sometimes you have to make that decision to go countercultural. And you'll get fights from your kids and it'll be awkward. But sometimes those fights are worth taking. And there was a question there, yes?
I want to piggyback on a point ago. I have a cycling coach who once said it never gets easier, you just get faster. Whatever you want. But relative to focus, I was just wondering if you could put that on a continuum as kids develop. At what point can you just say they're just kids and it's not natural to have to expect them to have it yet? And at what point do you say, okay, at this age, if they ain't got it, they're not going to get it? And how it may progress in between, or what realistic expectations?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to rephrase the question, but I think my answer will kind of summarize it for everybody. I would say never gets to the point where they're never going to get it. So there's this theory about sort of talent-based coaching approaches, and if you think it's about talent, that's an unhealthy or an unhelpful way, because actually talent doesn't exist. What we found through the work of Anders Ericsson, that deliberate practice is responsible for everything. So having that fixed mindset of whether it be focus or talent or skill is not one that we want to ascribe to. And so then the other answer is, so you never get to that point, so then you also understand at what age are they supposed to get it, and I kind of say almost never. Because if I'm here standing in front of you saying that I still struggle with the same things that I'm teaching my athletes, it's that growth mindset that I could always be better. So from the moment a kid is born to the moment that we die, if we're adapting the idea that I can be better and I can learn and I can grow in focus, in emotional regulation, in skill, I think that's the best way to go about it. There is no beginning or end, there is no giving up, and there's always an opportunity to progress. I really like that answer. You're kicking me off?
No.
Oh, oh, do you have a question?
Well, what we would like to do is invite you to the lobby, and if anybody has any additional questions, so you'll stick around for a
Yeah,
few minutes.
absolutely.
That you
Happy
can
to talk about this.
meet Dr. O'Connor, but we just wanted, on behalf of AAA and Forest Hills, we'd like to thank you for being here tonight.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.